The air in the CNN studio crackled with anticipation. Tonight's panel was supposed to be routine, another debate about the state of free speech and media bias in American politics. But the moment Karoline Leavitt and Jemele Hill were announced as guests, producers knew something different was about to unfold. Karoline, dressed in a crisp navy blazer and wearing her signature calm confidence, adjusted her mic with the same precision she used in congressional hearings. Across from her, Jemele Hill leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Jemele was no stranger to controversy, and she thrived in it. Her reputation as a progressive firebrand made her a frequent critic of conservative voices, and tonight, she was ready to challenge Karoline on every front. The debate topic? Media integrity and political censorship. As Anderson Cooper opened the show, he quickly gave way to the two opposing forces seated before him. Jemele struck first. Karoline represents everything wrong with the new wave of conservative propaganda, she said sharply, turning directly toward the camera. She doesn't care about truth. She cares about echoing Trumpist talking points and wrapping them in youth and confidence. Karoline didn't flinch. Her response was immediate, deliberate, and measured. "You don't get to define truth, Jemele," she said firmly. "You call it propaganda because it doesn't align with your worldview. But when liberal voices dominate the media, censorship is applauded. When conservatives speak, suddenly it's a threat?" The audience buzzed. Cooper raised an eyebrow. The gloves were off. This was no panel. This was war. Jemele laughed, but it was dry and dismissive. "You're playing the victim card, Karoline. No one is censoring you. You just don't like being challenged." Karoline leaned forward slightly. "Then let's challenge each other with facts, not feelings." The tension doubled. What had started as a debate was quickly evolving into a political standoff. Two women, both outspoken, intelligent, and media-savvy, were about to go head-to-head with millions watching. Karoline knew she wasn't just speaking for herself. She was there for the viewers who were tired of being called extremists for holding traditional American values. Jemele, on the other hand, was ready to expose what she saw as the dangerous rhetoric of a rising generation of right-wing influencers. The stage was set, the stakes were high, and neither woman was backing down. Karoline's eyes narrowed, but her voice stayed even. "Jemele, for years you've hidden behind the label of journalist while pushing personal politics on national platforms. You call it truth-telling. I call it activism disguised as objectivity." The audience reacted immediately. Some gasped, others cheered. Even Anderson Cooper looked momentarily caught off guard. Jemele leaned forward now, eyebrows raised. "I don't need to hide behind anything," she snapped. "I stand for racial justice, women's rights, and speaking out against hate. If that makes me an activist, I wear it proudly." Karoline didn't miss a beat. "So do I. I just don't believe you need to tear down one half of the country to uplift the other." It was the kind of line that hit hard, clean, sharp, and impossible to ignore. Jemele's smile faded. "You speak from a place of privilege, Karoline," she said, her voice lower but sharper. "You haven't faced the kind of institutional pushback people like me have. You represent a political machine that's tried to silence black voices for decades, and now you want to call me the aggressor?" Karoline leaned back slightly, refusing to let the emotional angle derail her. "Being a minority doesn't automatically make you right, Jemele, and being a conservative doesn't make me wrong. I'm tired of this double standard where any pushback from the right is labeled hate speech." Cooper stepped in briefly. "Let's keep this on the topic of media bias and freedom of expression." But it was already too late. The emotional undercurrent had shifted the room. Jemele turned back to Karoline with fire in her tone. "You've built a career on complaining about censorship while getting primetime interviews and making headlines. That's not being silenced. That's being promoted." Karoline shook her head. "Being visible doesn't mean being respected. And I've earned every platform I've stood on. not by playing identity politics, but by making arguments people are afraid to say out loud. A hush fell over the studio. Even the audience, which had been divided in its reactions, quieted for a moment, each person leaning in. The tension wasn't just political now, it was personal. Two women, two very different Americas, one stage, and neither was planning to lose. The crowd was practically holding its breath now. Karoline adjusted her mic slightly, her voice steady but slicing through the silence. You've called millions of Americans racists, bigots, or ignorant simply because they voted differently than you, Jemele. You've used your media power to smear half the country while acting like you're the underdog. Jemele sat up straighter, eyes narrowed, her hand tapping the table slowly like a ticking clock. I've called out systems of oppression. If some people feel targeted, maybe it's because they benefit from those systems and don't want to hear the truth. Karoline leaned forward, her voice rising. Truth? Or your version of it? Because your version seems to silence any voice that doesn't echo yours. You say you're fighting for justice, but you won't even debate someone like me without calling it hate. Anderson Cooper tried again. Let's not devolve into personal attacks. This is about the role of media and political rhetoric. But Karoline wasn't done. You use your platform to push division, Jemele. I use mine to speak for people who are tired of being bullied for loving their country, their faith, their flag. Jemele's expression hardened. Your flag? She snapped. That flag represents different things to different people. For some, it's a symbol of freedom. For others, it's a reminder of slavery, of segregation, of being told to wait your turn for basic human rights. Karoline didn't blink. And yet, we both sit here under its protection. You're free to criticize it. I'm free to defend it. That's America. The moment you decide only one viewpoint is allowed, you're not fighting for justice. You're fighting for control. A murmur passed through the audience, uneasy, electric. People shifted in their seats. Some nodded, others crossed their arms. Jemele stared, her voice calmer now, but colder. Control? I want equity, justice, recognition. You want to pretend everything's fine and tell people like me to stop complaining. Karoline's voice dropped just slightly, but her intensity never wavered. No, I want people like you to stop pretending you have a monopoly on pain, or truth, or patriotism. You don't. A silence fell, not one of resolution, but of escalation. Two voices, two visions of America, and only 1 hour left on live TV. The silence cracked like glass when Jemele leaned forward, her voice laced with something sharper than anger. History. You want to talk about monopolies, Karoline? She said slowly. Then let's talk about the monopoly of privilege. You grew up with platforms handed to you. You were welcomed in rooms I had to claw my way into. Karoline didn't flinch. Don't you dare reduce everything I've worked for to privilege. I earned my place at that White House podium, and I'm earning it again every time I speak the truth, even when people like you try to shut me down. Jemele tilted her head. The truth you speak comforts the powerful. It plays well on Fox, sure, but it's not justice. You represent the politics of comfort, of status quo, of protecting what's always been. I'm trying to change what's always been, because it hasn't worked for everyone. A few audience members clapped at that, but Karoline was ready. You're confusing disruption with progress. Not every tear-it-down moment leads to something better. Sometimes it just leaves rubble. Look at our cities, our education system, our discourse. You've convinced a generation that rage is a virtue. Jemele's jaw tightened. Rage is a virtue when no one's listening. And respect is a virtue, Karoline shot back, when you're trying to build something that lasts. Anderson Cooper tried to steer them back. This is getting more intense than anticipated. Let's center this back on media responsibility. Jemele ignored him. You parade around with your cross and flag like you're the victim. But who gets canceled in this country? People like me, not you. Karoline stood then, slowly, the studio lights catching her cross necklace, a moment not lost on the cameras. You're right. I wear my faith and my flag proudly, and I won't apologize for either. And I'm not the victim here, but I refuse to let people like you redefine what America is. Gasps. Some cheered, others booed. The studio was alive with heat and division. Twitter was already on fire. Jemele slowly stood too. Then let's finish this. Let's really talk about what America is. You bring your flag, I'll bring the truth. Karoline met her glare. I'll bring both. The air inside the studio was no longer just tense. It was electric. As Karoline and Jemele stood face to face, it felt less like a debate and more like a standoff between two versions of America. Anderson Cooper, trying to regain control, spoke quickly. Let's focus on the core of the issue. Media bias, political polarization. Both of you represent different ends of the spectrum. What would unity even look like in your vision? Karoline didn't sit. Her voice rang out clear. Unity doesn't mean surrender. It doesn't mean silencing faith, family, or freedom. It means standing for truth even when it's unpopular. It means not apologizing for being proud of your country. Jemele scoffed. You think waving a flag makes you right? You think wearing a cross makes you moral? I've seen that flag used to justify hate. I've seen faith weaponized to silence people like me. That's not unity. It's dominance. Karoline's tone sharpened. No, what you've seen is people twisting what those symbols mean. I won't let you redefine patriotism or faith because someone else misused them. That flag stands for the freedom you're using right now. To speak, to argue, to disagree. The studio audience erupted, half cheering, half shouting in frustration. Jemele raised a hand, her voice rising. What you call freedom, I've lived as suppression. My ancestors were denied that same flag's promise for generations. Don't preach about equality while standing on a platform built for people like you. Karoline stepped closer, her cross necklace gleaming under the lights. And yet, here you are, on the same platform. Speaking freely, I didn't deny you that. But now you want to tear it down because it wasn't built your way. Jemele's eyes burned. No, I want to rebuild it, so the next generation doesn't have to fight this same damn battle. The audience quieted. Anderson Cooper looked between them, stunned. The energy had shifted. This wasn't just political, it was existential. Two Americas were facing off live and millions were watching. And across social media, clips were already going viral. Karoline stands tall trended next to Jemele won't back down. Two women, two worlds, one broadcast, and neither was blinking. By the time the segment cut to commercial, Twitter was already on fire. Clips of Karoline pointing defiantly, Jemele slamming her palm on the desk, and Anderson Cooper's face frozen between panic and awe. They flooded every feed. Fox News immediately ran the headline, Karoline Leavitt defends faith, patriotism against leftist firestorm. MSNBC shot back within minutes. Jemele Hill calls out white conservatism and religious hypocrisy on live TV. The moment had exploded into a national flashpoint. Tucker Carlson tweeted, Karoline Leavitt just showed the country what real courage looks like. The left can't handle unapologetic truth. Over 1.2 million views in 30 minutes. Jemele's supporters fired back. She stood tall in the lion's den and told the truth. History's on her side. Progressive activists clipped the moment she said, I want to rebuild the platform. Outside the CNN building in Atlanta, protesters were already gathering. Some carried American flags and signs reading, Defend Truth. Others waved banners that said, Faith does not equal freedom for all. Meanwhile, Karoline sat in a quiet green room backstage, scrolling through the chaos. Her team was beaming. Her comms director leaned over. You just became the most Googled name in the country. She nodded once. Good. Jemele, in a separate room, was on the phone with her agent. I want a follow-up segment. We're not done. At the White House, someone showed the clip to the president. Sir, this is going to divide the country even further. He replied flatly, It already was. This just ripped off the bandage. And in middle America, at a diner in Iowa, a 60-year-old veteran turned to his wife watching the replay. She said what I've been trying to say for years. Finally. Back at CNN, Anderson Cooper came back from commercial break, looked into the camera and said, "We witnessed more than a political argument tonight. We saw two visions of America collide. One side isn't backing down. The question is, which one are you on?" The battle lines were no longer theoretical. They were digital, emotional, cultural, and they were everywhere. The studio air was thick with electricity as the second round resumed. Karoline leaned forward, voice low but firm. "You talk about privilege, Jemele, but you sit here on a primetime platform tearing down people of faith and calling it justice." Jemele didn't blink. "No, Karoline, I'm tearing down the hypocrisy that hides behind faith. The same people who preach love and freedom are the first to ban books, silence voices, and shut down schools that teach the truth." The audience erupted again, mixed claps and boos. Karoline's supporters shouted, "Tell it, Karoline!" Jemele's base snapped fingers in agreement. Cooper looked ready to call security. Karoline stood up, her crucifix necklace glinting under the lights. "I'm not ashamed of my faith, and I won't apologize for it. You say it's used to oppress? I say it's what lifted my family from nothing. My grandfather prayed for a chance. America gave it to him." Jemele stood too now, their eye level even, the tension unbearable. "Then you should know better than anyone," she fired back. "How faith was also used to justify slavery, Jim Crow, and denying women their voice. We're not in 1950 anymore. The world changed, Karoline. Maybe it's time you did too." The room fell into a momentary silence. Karoline didn't look away. "Change doesn't mean abandoning truth. You think progress is screaming louder? I think it's standing firm when it's not popular." Even Anderson Cooper took a step back, letting them clash without interruption. Suddenly, a surprise twist. A studio monitor lit up behind them. It was a split-screen display, Karoline's viral moment defending her values, and Jemele's fiery monologue on systemic bias. CNN producers had leaked the live Twitter poll. Who won the debate? Karoline, 51%, Jemele, 49%, over 600,000 votes in 12 minutes. Karoline turned slightly, seeing it, then looked back at Jemele. "It's not about winning a poll," she said quietly. "It's about whether you're willing to say something that costs you popularity and still believe it's right." Jemele's jaw tightened. "Or maybe it's about saying something that makes someone else finally feel seen." And right there, the clash wasn't just politics anymore. It was a war between conviction and confrontation, between identity and ideals, between a rising conservative star and a progressive icon, and neither would back down. The moment the broadcast cut to commercial, social media exploded like wildfire. Hashtags stormed the trending tabs. Karoline crushes it. Jemele strikes back. Faith vs. fire. Clips of the two women locking eyes and delivering their fiercest lines began circulating in every political subreddit, TikTok stitch, and Instagram reel imaginable. Fox News aired Karoline's stand with the headline, "Leavitt defends America's soul, shuts down progressive firebrand." Meanwhile, MSNBC countered with, "Jemele Hill holds ground against religious gaslighting, a new voice for the people." Karoline exited the stage first, flanked by two aides. A reporter called out, "Miss Leavitt, any regrets?" She turned, her face composed. "Not when you speak the truth. That's something we've forgotten how to do in this town." Jemele, moments later, paused for cameras with a sharp glare. "She can wrap hate in scripture all she wants. I'll still call it out. Every time." The post-debate analysis on CNN didn't even try to be neutral. A panel of 6, split down the ideological center, erupted into their own live argument. One conservative commentator said, "Karoline just became the new face of unapologetic faith in politics." A liberal analyst shot back, "She became the face of denial." Jemele reminded America that truth doesn't always come from a pulpit. Outside the studio, a crowd had formed. Protesters and supporters clashed, some waving "Protect Faith" signs, others chanting, "Faith does not equal freedom." Police held barricades. It was just a TV segment, but it had turned into a cultural earthquake. By midnight, even President Trump reposted Karoline's moment, simply captioning, "That's how you stand up, brilliant." An hour later, Jemele Hill posted a clip of her final retort with, "When you shine a light, some folks call it heat. I call it truth." Neither name left the headlines for 48 hours. Podcasts exploded. Church sermons referenced it. University forums debated it. Late-night comedy roasted both. But through all the noise, one thing was clear. This wasn't just another argument on TV. This was two Americas speaking at once. One in defense of tradition, the other in the name of change. And the whole country had tuned in to watch the spark. Karoline sat alone in her hotel suite, the city skyline glowing silently through the window. Her phone buzzed nonstop, texts from supporters, advisors, even a few Republican senators. But she stared past it all, focused on her own reflection in the glass. The echo of Jemele's words still lingered. Wrapped hate in scripture, those words pierced her, not because she believed them, but because she knew millions did. She stood, walked to the desk, and opened her worn leather-bound Bible. It wasn't for performance, it never had been. She traced a verse with her finger, quietly. Meanwhile, Jemele was seated across from her producer in a dimly lit cafe, away from the press. She sipped black coffee, her face taut but focused. "She's not stupid," she said. "She's calculated, and that makes her dangerous." Her producer nodded. "You held your ground, though. You didn't flinch." Jemele leaned back, unsure whether that was a win or a warning. In truth, she hadn't expected Karoline to be so composed, so confident. She'd expected Bible verses, sure, but not a woman who believed every single word. Back at the studio, producers were already in meetings. The ratings were through the roof. Network execs were discussing a follow-up, Part 2, Faith versus Freedom, the rematch. Karoline's team advised against it. "It's too soon. Let things breathe." But she wasn't sure. Something told her this was only the beginning. Meanwhile, Jemele scrolled through the hate messages and support posts. One DM stood out. "You held the line. Don't stop. America heard you tonight." She smiled faintly. It wasn't about winning, not for her. It was about surviving a machine that preferred silence over dissent. That night, Karoline knelt in prayer. That same night, Jemele outlined a new op-ed. Both women felt the world watching, and neither intended to step back. Because when the spotlight fades, the echoes remain. The segment replayed across every major news channel, from Fox to MSNBC, clips of Karoline Leavitt firmly stating, "You don't get to redefine faith just because it offends your politics," were met with endless commentary. On Twitter, now X, the hashtag number #FaithVsFire trended for hours. In conservative circles, Karoline was heralded as a rising warrior of unapologetic values. Supporters clipped her now iconic line into memes and sound bites. One viral video paired her speech with swelling music and the caption, "This is what conviction looks like." Even Donald Trump reposted the clip with one word, savage. Meanwhile, Jemele Hill wasn't retreating either. On her podcast, she dissected the debate point by point. Not bitter, but sharp. She's not just preaching, she's building a narrative that frames any challenge as persecution, Jemele said, and that's dangerous in a country already divided by identity. Liberals praised her resilience, her composed pushback, her refusal to back down in the face of moral absolutism. But even some moderates admitted Karoline hadn't just held her own. She had forced the nation to take sides, and that's what the media loved most. CNN booked both women for separate follow-up interviews. TikTok creators dramatized the clash in split-screen reenactments. Young voters debated in comment sections. Late-night comedians joked, "It was like watching the Bible meet Beyoncé's Twitter." But beneath the noise, something deeper stirred. In churches across America, Karoline's confrontation reignited discussion about the place of faith in public life. In colleges, Jemele's defense of secular freedom became a case study in political science classes. One moment, two women, millions watching. And in that final shot on the original broadcast, as Karoline stood up from her seat and looked straight into the camera before leaving the stage, she didn't smile. She didn't smirk. She simply said, "Let America decide." And with that, she walked off, not away, but forward. In a world where beliefs are weaponized and convictions are questioned, one moment can shake the narrative. Karoline Leavitt didn't just argue, she stood for something. Jemele Hill didn't just push back, she demanded clarity. But only one walked away, having reshaped the debate. Truth or ideology? Faith or fire? You watched it unfold, now you decide.